Diners love digging into a plate full of boiled and seasoned crawfish at restaurants like this one in Houston, though they might not realize how much getting them on the plate depends on the weather.
The extreme weather, the freeze that we had recently did, make the catch go down a little bit. When it's cold, crawfish stay dormant. They don't really move around. They don't really eat much. The bigger ones will burrow deeper into the mud, so those, they'll hide out away from the baskets.
Catching crawfish takes a lot of time, planning, and hope for the perfect conditions. In April, farmers will plant rice, wait about 2 months, then flood the fields to create a bog, which is prime breeding ground for crawfish. But a recent drought in parts of Louisiana and Texas means less available farmland.
When you have drought, you lose the water, and the crawfish have to go into the burrows in order to survive down where there's water. And that's prime growing season, right? It's warm, it's hot, it's summer. That's when a cold-blooded animal should be putting on weight. Well, if they're down in a burrow trying to survive, they can't be up eating vegetation, and a lot of that vegetation dies off, so they've got no food. So they're not going to grow much, they're not going to molt much, they're not going to reproduce much, so you're going to end up with smaller crawfish.
Another problem is the temperature.
The freeze, very much the same way. It's a lack of food. If they're staying in the burrows longer, they're not out foraging and eating as much. So when you go in, so a typical sack of crawfish is usually around 35 pounds. What we're seeing is it's really taking, you're still getting a 35-pound sack, but it's taking about 10% more crawfish on average to fill a sack in many places because they're just smaller field-run crawfish. And so we're not getting those big jumbos.
You wouldn't expect a place like Texas to have a problem with the cold. But it's becoming more common as our climate changes and the number of extreme weather events increases.
Most people familiar with Texas, it's a big state. The northern half freezes. We get freezes in the panhandles out west. What normally doesn't freeze is the coast. Usually, if you look back at climate records, about every 10 to 12 years, we'll get a freeze at the coast. We've had 2 major freezes that have been prolonged for days in 2 years apart. And that is completely unusual. So it's not just disrupting crawfish, it's disrupting the red drum production, hybrid striped bass production, all these aquaculture species that are growing down there.
Despite the weather whiplash, crawfish farmers continue to press on with their craft, knowing that some years are better than others.
Well, at this field right here is 100 acres, and I've got about 775 traps in it. And 3 weeks ago, I was catching 2 sacks out of it. A week ago, I was catching 4 sacks out of it, and then today, since it's right after that freeze, I don't expect to catch any more than 3 or 4 sacks.
As farmers head into their peak season, seeing a drop-off in numbers this early is a grim sign, and those ups and downs translate to more expensive crawfish for consumers.